Okay, so I'm out at the county estate auction. It's basically where all the stuff goes. Fortunately, when people pass away and the family's not around to claim anything or they don't have any family. So I just purchased this 1985 Buick Century T-Type. So it's kind of a rare car. They made, I think, in the 4,000, somewhere around there, of these, and half were coupes and half were sedans, which this one's a sedan. So basically, it's a small Buick. It's a Buick Century. Most of these had the Iron Duke four-cylinder, but since it's the T-Type, this one actually came with a 3.8-liter six-cylinder. So that's what kind of makes it the sport model. So right now I'm going to get in, I'm going to drive it home, and we'll see what's up with it. And it's going to kind of be our new project car, kind of an unusual 80s car. Okay, just going to do a quick walk around. I'll show you some of the other stuff they had here. They had this really cool Bronco that went for about what it would go for retail. They had a Jeep Cherokee, Jeep Wrangler that has like really cool graphics. This went for a lot of money, as you can imagine. And it's a 5-speed with the 4.0 six-cylinder. Other interesting vehicles they had this Cimarron that went for like $50, but it doesn't run. It's sat since the 90s. An Alante that doesn't run, and a 96 Taurus that's been pretty well wrecked. Went for like $200 with a salvage title. But so I picked up this little Century here for like $400, and with the auction fees it came to $460. As you can see, it's pretty good shape. I mean, really the only body damage is back here. You got this corner and the tail light, which I should be able to get one off of a regular Century from pick apart. And the rear bumper has a little bit of damage there from the sun. I'm guessing this thing was in a carport and the back end was sticking out. It's got tags expired back in July, so not too far out, and the original Sunset California plates from the 80s, which you don't see those very often anymore. But overall, a pretty clean car. So I'm going to get in it right now. I got to go home. I got to get an Uber and get back here and get my truck that I'm going to have to leave here for about an hour. Okay, so I'm in the car. You can see it's pretty good shape. The dash is actually in good shape. It does have a rip on the driver's side seat. Still has the original Delco stereo. I'm going to start. This actually kind of has a little RPM, a little tachometer there, similar to like the Grand National. See, it starts right up. When you rev it, it comes up. So very similar to a Grand National. It's not turbo like a Grand National or a T-Type. Has kind of low gas, so I'm going to have to go get some gas. But let's see if the radio works. I don't know if the radio works. These push on. Oh, power button. Okay, the radio works. So we'll test that out. And they actually put a new battery in it at the auction. So I'm set with a new battery. It's going to need tires. It's going to need a headliner, typical 80s GM headliner. And the rearview mirror is missing, which would be right here. So right now I'm going to head home. I'm going to go fill this thing up so I can make it home, which isn't that far. It's about a half an hour drive. Catch an Uber and come back, and then I'll let you know how this thing drives. All right, so the Buick actually made it back from the auction in the city of Industry. It had a problem when I first started it. It actually, the brakes were locked, and somebody at the auction actually mashed down on the parking brake. I don't know if the guy who owned it previously ever used the parking brake, because a lot of people just don't. But for the first few blocks, it would actually, when you put more than just a little bit of pressure on the brakes, it would lock one of the rear wheels, and then that problem actually rectified itself, so it might have been something sticking or something. I'm gonna have to pull it apart and see what's going on in there. Also, it did run hot. I actually had to put some water in it when I first took off. I went to a gas station, drove it a little bit. The temperature gauge was kind of up and down. It never really got into the red though. When I got to about Temple City on the way back, I took surface streets because of the brake thing, just in case. But it actually started getting a little bit warmer, so I pulled over and actually at AutoZone with a large parking lot, left it there and actually caught an Uber back to get my truck, and came back, started up the Buick, topped it off with water and coolant, and drove the rest of the way home. So it actually made it home other than those issues. And it seems to be running okay other than that issue. Looking inside the radiator, it's definitely going to need to be replaced. It's definitely past its due. Past when it should have been done. So I'm going to do a quick walk around. I'm going to show you some of the other things I found that was wrong with the car that I'm going to have to fix on this. But oh, and also I looked it up. This car actually, they only produced 2,850 Buick Century T-Type sedans in 1985. So it's a bit of a rarity. So I'm sure there's not very many of these left. So we're gonna see. I'm gonna see how many of them are out there, see what I can find for this car. It's gonna need actually a tail light and things like that. Okay, so I started up the Buick so you can hear it running. Actually sounds pretty good. I mean, it definitely it was not cleaned up at all ever. I don't know what the maintenance history of this car is, but the car actually is running really, really well. It's actually pretty smooth. I'm going to probably do a full tune-up on it, since the wires and the cap and everything look kind of old. In fact, the cap is actually a Delco one, so it might even be the original one to the car. I mean, the car is 106,000, and the radiator 100% is going to need to be replaced. It's toast. Fortunately, they're readily available and not that expensive. And the auction I got it from actually installed a brand new battery, so not bad for what I got paid for, considering what batteries go for. So definitely going to be a fun project, and we're going to see where this goes. Okay, so we're going to do another walk around of the car. I'm going to show you everything I found that was kind of wrong with it while I was driving. As I was saying, this car, they only made 2,850 of the Century T-Type sedans in 1985. Can't imagine many of these are still around, especially not in this kind of condition. The driver's side window does not work. It actually is stuck down. All the other windows work, so I'm gonna have to pull it apart and see what's going on. It could be a switch, could be a regulator, or it could be the actual motor. Also, I mean, it has a rip in the seat. I'm just gonna live with that. But the power seat is not moving, but you can hear the engine, or the motor actually moving. Those who know GM vehicles, there's like a coupler in there that's like plastic. Cadillac uses them as well, and they actually tend to go, so you have to take the seat out and replace the coupler, and then the power seat should work. Fortunately, it wasn't in like an old lady position. The person on this car was a man, so at least it was in somewhat of a backed up position, but it was actually too high for me. My head was kind of like up in the headliner. Other things, it shifted fine. It did stall out a couple times. Then after that, it kind of rectified itself. So I'm assuming it just wasn't used much, probably in its last years. Back seat is like in really nice condition. So it's actually not bad. I mean, it looks to be like it represents itself as a 106,000 mile car. And it's got the original T-type rims, the aluminum rims. Two of the center caps. One center cap's missing and the other one's like smashed. But I have two good center caps. And then, of course, I think I mentioned it before, the bumper. I could probably just get some black rubberized paint and paint that. And I have to find that tail light that's cracked. Hopefully I can track one of those down. The trunk's actually in really good condition, if you look in here. It's rubberized coating. I don't know if they came that way, but I'm guessing. It's like everything's there. I'm guessing the jack's in there. I'm not going to go yanking that whole thing out of there. Pull out the spare tire and everything. Just coming around, it looks like it's got an aftermarket third brake light kit, because I think they went to third brake lights in 1986. In 1985 they didn't have third brake lights, so it looks like to be an aftermarket like Pep Boys one. A lot of people would put those on their cars to make them look a little newer, because it was like the newest safety feature in 1986. And I don't know if I mentioned before, it's a little bit dinged up right there, so I'll see what I can do about that. Other than that, I mean, it's pretty straight. It's all there, and I'm gonna see what I can do with this thing. I said, not exactly a valuable car, but definitely a rare one, and one that deserves to be saved. And you'll be following it here on my YouTube channel. Okay, so that's about going to do it for my first video on the 1985 Buick Century T-Type. If you like what you see, be sure to like, subscribe, watch my other videos, and leave a comment as to what you think of the Century T-Type.